Teléfonos en cabina 404-981-5797. 404-981-5797. Línea de textos 770-821-9907. Línea de textos 770-821-9907.
How you guys doing? Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están?
Buenas tardes. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. ¿Qué tienen para nosotros hoy? Buenas tardes, Paul. Good afternoon. What do you guys have for us today en el programa de Chambeando? Gladiadores.
Absolutely, yeah. Me and Paul and I are going to be going over some few things as far as what's going to happen this weekend. Some little recap of what had happened and what is to come, and as well as like some outstanding numbers of the work that's being done so far.
Awesome. Yeah. Just wondering, translation, do you want to do your part in Spanish and I can translate, or do you want to do just bilingual?
What works? Either or?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do a little bit of Spanglish if that's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and share the social media. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Entonces, en las redes sociales nos pueden encontrar en Facebook como GLAD, en Instagram glad.ga, X glad_, y TikTok glad_ también.
Perfect. And why is it important to share all these social medias?
Yeah, absolutely. Es algo que tenemos que recordar cada día, ¿verdad? Porque siempre andamos subiendo importante updates, informaciones, eventos o el trabajo que estamos haciendo.
Right. We got to make sure to uplift all that work that everyone is doing here, the community, the compas here that are out and about organizing. So make sure you give us a like. Denos un like por ahí, compartan. And if you guys want to phone in, you guys can also do that. The phone number here, the radio station is 404-981-5797. El número de teléfono, si gusta marcar, 404-981-5797. So I don't know which one of these is going to start with which topic.
Absolutely.
Let's get to it.
Yo quise hablar un poquito otra vez de la ley que estaba activa desde mayo, ¿verdad? Que es el HB 1105. La razón es porque yo siento que todavía mucha gente no están, ¿cómo se puede decir? They're like still in the know about this law, and that it's actually active, and it's been active since May 1st. Pero esta ley, cuando se firmó el 1 de mayo, por Brian Kemp, was a misunderstanding because a lot of people thought that it would go into effect in June, right? But the thing is, it had already went into effect the moment he signed it, and that only one part of the law wasn't going to be active until the 31st of December. So we've been getting a lot of comments through our social media, like, how does this affect? Where are the retenes, this and that? The thing is that there was like a lot of hype when it kicked off, that like there was a lot of police checkpoints or roadblocks, but as of recently, it's been the water's been calm, like they say, right? There hasn't been anything drastic. And as far as local police departments, like Cobb County, you know what I mean, they've been very, very calm as well. So it's one of those things where, yes, it's active. Maybe they're still trying to strategize how they're going to go around it, how they're going to start influencing it or pushing it, but it's been very, very calm. But the thing is, though, regardless of how it's been going, I think the key point here is an organization like GLAHR, we've still consistently been going all around Georgia, whether it's tabling, whether it's workshops, or our weekly community meetings, emphasizing what the law does. But not only that, but what are your rights? You know what I mean? How to protect yourself and your loved ones in case you're in a sticky situation. You see what I'm saying? And as far as the digital aspect of it, we've been doing like what we like to call is like a series, right? Which has been very, very, very successful with people kind of reaching out to us to ask her even more questions. And you can find it on our TikTok and our Instagram and our Facebook. It's a little series. You'll see Ade, our executive director, talking about it, what it does, how you can protect yourself, and what potential threats it could carry in the future.
Yeah, and I know that was part of the strategy in the beginning. What Joe just mentioned, the one preparing, making sure that this new law wasn't going to catch our community unprepared, which is I would say in the past it has been something more of capacity, what we can do. Now we can work together with other attorneys. They can, it's not just 3 people here at GLAHR looking at the law and trying to interpret it. It's a collaboration of many organizations.
Absolutely.
Attorneys looking at the law, making sure that they understanding it. They pass on that information to everyone else so that we can make, digital content for it, so that we can have the talks in our community meetings and talk with people and explain to them how this is going to affect them. Like you said, go out to the community and do the outreach before it happened. We did so many events before it was signed into law, because we knew that the possibilities of it getting signed were pretty high, but that wasn't going to stop us from protesting, from going out, from doing what we could do to stop it or to change some of the bad parts in the law that we did manage to change, and to prepare for it. Like you said, this is the important part, right? To know your rights. And I think a lot of that confusion, it is confusing. Most of us are not attorneys. I'm not an attorney. When I look at the law, I have no idea sometimes like what it means. It has a lot of numbers citing other things. So when you got all these different dates, like they have the sign date, they have the when he signs it, or the December 12th or December something deadline for the cops, like that's when I think like misinformation comes out, because we don't know. And like you said, a lot of times right before it got signed, there was a lot of checkpoints, a lot of pressure in the community. Some people think that it had to do with the death of the student over there in Athens. It was sort of like, a backlash against the community. So that happened before the law was even signed. So, and afterwards too, like there was a lot of animosity towards the community. And a lot of times we have talked about that this was sort of in preparation, right? It wasn't forcing the police yet to be in like the 287G program, but it's preparing the ground for them that in the future, if they want to apply, they pretty much like have, they're obligated almost to apply to this program. So it's like they have set everything in motion, and, at any moment they can start applying it as they seem, or putting pressure in the community. I don't know if we've heard any reports, you guys know, from the community, like concrete reports. I know of abuses. I know they are applying it, right? If you're arrested and you go to jail, they're going to be, doing, not just letting you out there. They have to, it's law now.
Right. And that's a great question, because, and just to kind of go a little bit back to what you were saying a little bit earlier too, it's like the moment it kicked off, and it almost felt like, community members were kind of like pointing fingers at each other. They were frying. It was like, oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because of that. Like, hold on. You know what I mean? Now it's time to really organize and understand that the potential hazards that it has. You know what I mean? Like, cuídate in that aspect. Like, a lot of people think that just because you're chilling in your car and a cop comes in and knocks on your window that you have to open the door. No, that car is an extension of your home. You know what I mean? So if it's not a routine traffic stop, if you're minding your own business, you don't have to do anything. And as far as asking, like, if there's been any, like, as of recently, like, police checkpoints, it's funny that you ask, because we have canvassers who are always talking to the community day in, day out. We also have, like, those tabling events, and then we'll have those conversations, and surprisingly, no. It's more that they've been keeping an eye out, but they haven't seen anything. But again, there's also that part, like you just mentioned, where it's active. And just because they're not acting on it yet doesn't mean they won't. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just like they're, again, trying to strategize for future increments of the law.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of, and I'm sure you heard this one, Paul, the one that they passed in Florida last year. The reason why we didn't have the Asamblea over there as protests against that. And a lot of the sheriffs came out and they're like, oh, don't pay attention to this law. We're not going to be enforcing it. And they didn't for like the first couple months, and then cases started popping up because, I mean, it's still a law. Yes, they have a sort of discretion on when to apply it or not, because that's how police apply the law. Sometimes, they just give you a warning. But it didn't mean that, just because they came out and publicly said that they weren't going to do it, 6-7 months later, now they're starting to enforce it. So I think the fact that it's a law that already sends out the message, right? Like, we're coming for the community. It's a law, and we just want to make sure that people, they know their rights.
And I was reviewing some of the work in the last few months and the webinars that were done to show that this same kind of law is being passed in other states, and people are having to organize in the same way. So there's definitely a pattern, like it was Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, and people are having to deal with the same problem.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up. I completely not forgotten the concept, but forgotten that we did that for several months. Giovanni and the other organizers collaborated with many of these other orgs from other states, and they came in. Yeah, I remember every Monday we had a talk with someone different with similar laws or other laws that had passed in the state and how they were combating them, right? And I would say, it's a systematic attack. It might be a different law, but it's pretty much the same content. And at the end of the day, it's, what Joe just mentioned, it's like we have to prepare, and that helps, right? To talk to somebody else, to know that, how they're fighting it, gives us a little bit of ideas how to strategize around it. And I think GLAHR's in a better spot now to combat a lot of this stuff, to make sure we get out there with all the information, the correct information, the correct dates, because even like major news sources were like, oh no, it doesn't go into effect until much later, because there was that confusion. It's like, no, it's in effect. It's not until, some people were like, oh, it's not until December. Some people are like, no, it's not until, later and until the end of the session. It's like, no, the moment he signed it, it went into effect. And there was a lot of misinformation out there. So I like, I don't know if you ever heard Jorge Mujica when he says that good information doesn't fall out from the sky into your hands. You have to, go out there and look for it. And one of the ways is, follow us on social media. And we're always putting out a lot of info to make sure the community is informed.
Absolutely. It's another way it's another strategy for defense of our community, right? Is being able to actively and effectively upload, vital information that they can use. And that's why it's one of those things where we also emphasize that hotline number too. A lot of times maybe you can't reach us through a direct message during like a very like fast-paced incident or something that needs to happen now. It's like one of those things where you can reach out and get that information and help that you need. But Paul also had some awesome information regarding to the history.
Yeah, I just went back to look at the statement when the bill was signed, and it was not a coincidence that it happened on May Day, which is recognized around the world as a day to honor workers and the contributions they make. So here you have a governor passing and signing a bill that's affecting immigrant workers who contribute so much to the economy in Georgia, like the press statement said about the infrastructure, agriculture, all the ways that immigrants help this economy run. And this was the same governor that, along with other governors in the South, signed a joint statement against union organizing that was being done by the United Auto Workers. So it's not a coincidence that the same governor that's signing bills to make it harder for teachers to teach the real history, signs an anti-immigrant bill, signs an anti-union bill. This is the kind of government that we're dealing with here in the South.
Right.
And I would say even the county, like that he chose, I don't know why specifically he went out of his way to sign in for Forsyth County. I have my suspicions of why it's a very anti or very racist county. I would say it's I think it's one of the last lynchings here in the state was in that county, and it's you know,
It
you don't
has
want
a
to.
history.
Right. It's like you don't want to just be like, oh, I'm just, throwing out conspiracy theories. But like the date, it's like he could have
No
signed
coincidence.
it. Right. There's just no coincidence on that part. He could have chosen any other day had already been passed. He chose that day specifically, and he went out his way out there to sign it. It's the message that they send out, right, to the community, to everyone. And to me, yeah, it's sickening that in the South they keep trying to take rights from workers too. It's
And keep people divided, just like with what we're seeing with this election, how immigrants are being scapegoated. It's something that happens every election, that this is a way to distract people from the real problems.
yeah.
Absolutely. A member and their family up in South Georgia are actually currently seeking some lawsuits right now because them and their family are working the fields, and their boss is not paying them up to par at all. You know what I mean? But it's something that you still see. It's something that we're still fighting, but it's also great to see that with the ability of being able to understand your rights. You know what I mean? That you stand up and take that action. You know what I mean? Kind of like putting the horns on the boss. Like, no, I'm not letting this. Like, this stops here. You know what I mean?
And that's where the power is.
Absolutely. It's a domino effect. The moment, if that was happening to me, so Paul sees that, he gets motivated. Okay, me too. And it just keeps going and keeps going. And together, you know what I mean? As we start to inform each other and motivate each other, we empower each other.
Correct. And we have a phone call from Jorge from Nicaragua. Let's give him a call. Jorge, we have Paul here on the line with us. If I know you speak English, so I don't know if you want to do the segment in English or if you want to do it Spanish, so I can go ahead and translate. ¿Cómo estás, Jorge?
Well, I'm doing fine. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Jonathan. No, just real quick. If I could ask a quick question, very brief. Are we talking about a specific law in Georgia that has apparently just passed? And if so, I would like to get the exact name, number, or whatever registration as it is, whatever it is in the Congress that this thing passed under, so I can go ahead and research it myself, because it sounds like something that's perfectly cast as unconstitutional if, and like I said, if, a big if, what you guys are saying on the radio or on the website is correct. So I want to research this for myself. Not that I don't trust you, but in the past I've had a tendency to see that you guys speak from the far left, and I want to make sure that I get a balanced view of this law. So if you could, I got my pen ready. I can go ahead and write it down if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. He's I'm assuming he's talking about the House Bill 1105.
1105, is that HB or is just a
That's right, HB 1105.
H.B.1105? Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, I'll go ahead and take a look at it
Yeah,
and do some research on my own.
I don't know if there's still the first revision, because it got changed. There was a lot of meetings on it. So if you can find, and I think the website does allow it to look at the first draft of it, because it got changed. It included some stuff that, like you said, was definitely unconstitutional. They wanted to take DNA sampling from people before even the arrest, which there were attorneys present. They're like, this doesn't even make sense. But that was part of the the draft of law. They ended up getting rid of it. But as the bill was initially drafted, it was very, very aggressive. But you can look at the law and
Yep. And
Do your own
Jorge,
research.
if you go on that Georgia General Assembly and you type in HB 1105, you'll see the current version and the past version. So you'll see the quote unquote tweaks they've made, but roughly what the bill does.
Wonderful. I will go ahead and do that.
All right, Jorge. Thanks for
Thank
the
you very
call.
much, guys. Take care.
So ahí está la participación de Jorge. That was Jorge asking for more information on this. And yeah, I remember watching several organizers and the comms team was there when it was being discussed on the floor. Some of the proposed changes, because from both sides, the sides that were supporting it, they said it wasn't aggressive enough. They wanted to change the language on, I think what was it, shall, and it was shall versus another word, meaning like they wanted to make sure that it was coded in that the police had to make. That they didn't have a choice, that it wasn't up to discretion, that, this was, if they arrested somebody, they have to put them on a database. They have to make sure to check their immigration status. It wasn't if you have the capacity, it was like they fought over this, and the police also came out and talked about it because they know they didn't have the resources to do this for every single person that came through. And they're like, well, where is this coming from? And part of me, just hearing it, just kind of laughed because they were like, oh, well, that's a problem for you guys to figure out, right? It wasn't like, oh, yeah, we're going to give you more resources or we're going to make sure we're going to figure out a system. No, it was more of like, the ask is you're going to have to do this and you're going to have to figure out how to do it. We're just demanding of you, to do it.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, a few local police departments, spoke out and we're just like, we're not on board on this. Like, we simply, like you said, we don't have the resources to do that because you're talking about, as of when it started, to implement a database of every single person. You know what I mean? That's like nearly impossible, man. Like, you know what I mean? So it's definitely really peculiar in my opinion, and it's also just another scare tactic. I remember my buddy, he calls me Soto. He was when that hit the fan, he was texting me every other day, like, did you hear anything about any checkpoints, this and that? I mean, the dude was so scared, like, to leave his house to even go down the street to the supermarket, you know what I mean, for fear. And respectfully so, you know what I mean? But it's also one of those things where, like, we have to see as a community together, like, we have to organize, we have to educate everyone and know their rights, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people were thinking that it was going to be similar to the law that they had in California, where it was going to, like, show me your papers. And in a sense, yes, but not entirely. But again, it's emphasizing, like, as long as you didn't inherently, like, break any law off rip, you're fine. You don't have to, like, open a door, whether you're in your car or at home, you know what I mean? You're safe at home in that aspect. They don't have a search warrant. If they don't have a search warrant and you're in your vehicle or in your home, you don't have to respond to anybody.
Yeah, and that's part of knowing your rights, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people, don't know that, or they feel uncomfortable sometimes exercising those rights. Maybe you have an immigration officer, banging on your door, and because they don't come knocking, they come pretty much kicking the door down.
Right.
They don't do that because they know it's illegal, but they come banging on your door asking for somebody, and even they're not home, it's like, what do you do if I see cops outside? I'm going to open the door. Like, what's happening? My first instinct isn't, just not opening the door. They want something, and when they come at me aggressive, well, they're the ones that have guns on them. I'm going to be, but the moment you open the door, that's like how law is written, that's like inviting them into your home, and they, if they have unfortunately, it differs, the kind of warrants that immigration has versus the warrants that the police department has. It has to be signed by a judge. And we're like, well, what's the difference? And, campaigns like ICE-free zone deal with that kind of thing because there are differences. And it's educating the community that they have rights, that, a law or a court order is different when it's, signed by an actual judge versus if I print out my own court order to, go and search Joe's house, it has no power. And that's basically what immigration is doing. They're using their own orders, and they're being, signed off by themselves. So it's not like, a judge is ordering that. So there's a lot of protections that the community didn't know. And, immigration has, I don't remember who I heard it from, if it was from Carlos, or the campaign was so successful that they were attributing those signs that they hated them. They knew that, if there was a sign that said, ICE-free zone, that people knew their rights, and they weren't going to open up no matter how, aggressive they were knocking.
Well, that's another thing in terms of history, and it's in the statement, too, that the bill attempts to undo work that had been done, where local communities carved out space ICE is not welcome here, and the local government would agree to that in places like Clarkston and Decatur that I know about, and I know there were other communities that worked on this, and so now for the state to impose, it overrides what local communities were trying to decide for themselves.
Exactly. It's all that work that's being done by them, and then all of a sudden you're imposing it on local authorities to do that. And that's why they have until December or the end of the year, because many of these places don't have the resources or don't have the structure to do this additional job. And unfortunately, again, because the law was changed so many times, it's like the interpretation of it, it's like just hearing the attorneys go back and forth. It's like, are you sure this is what you want? And I remember specifically they were like, well, we're going to have to make, some changes to it, something to that extent, because they knew that, if it had passed, just as it had passed, it would have been unconstitutional to put someone under or to detain somebody, not put them under arrest, and already take DNA records from them. That's not even like, I think the only people that they take DNA samplings from, I think, is a federal crime in the United States, or a felony crime. So it doesn't to do that to someone, because how it was written, it was before they even were certain that they had committed a crime. Or yes, sure, you press them of a crime, but you don't. They still have to go to a court. They still have to be, you still have to present all the proof, and you still have to, find them guilty of it. But all this other stuff was prior to, and they're like, no, the law was written in a way, like Joe said, to intimidate, to make sure. It's like, I feel like they wrote it in a way to, let's see how much we can get past. And, yeah, sure, if they knock, this part out, it's still fine because it has, the rest of it. And like Joe said, a lot of people, because I was out in those tabling events, some people were asking us, like, what do you suggest? It's like, should I just leave the state? Because that's how, that's a, I don't want to say solution, but that's a measure that a lot of people took, just like when it passed in Florida, a lot of people migrated out. Here in Georgia, the same thing. People are like, well, if I can't drive, to get groceries, if I can't drive to get my job, if I'm uncertainty and might get arrested or might not, how they're going to apply this law, a lot of people left, and it's, again, separation of family. To me, that's a direct attack on a community.
That's right. And it's so funny because I remember, I forget his name, but he spoke out in Florida because a lot of the people who were working the land, the agricultural land, a lot of them were immigrants. And so when they all started leaving, coming to Georgia or whatever, but just leaving the state for their safety, at first it was just like, yeah, this law is a huge success. This is great for our communities. Flash forward a few months later, he's speaking out. He's like, oh, man, I love my workers. I wish they would come back, this and that. It's like, no, again, it's really emphasizing that, being a scapegoat. You only need us when you want us, but when we're no longer, a resource for you, you're just like, we're just left on the back burner, you know what I mean? And that's not at all how it works at all, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's, you hit it. They see us as a piece that adds value, and once you no longer add value, it's like, oh, then where's the humanity go in that place, right? It's like, we're not an item, we're not a commodity, but immigration, it's treated as that, it's out labor. Once you're no longer needed, goodbye.
That's been the whole history, right?
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. But yeah, going on forward though, we wanted to dive in a little bit of what happened recently with the debate. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we were seeing, how both Harris and Trump were talking about one of the subjects being immigration, and Trump was discussing his focus on border security and pointing to his administration policies to reduce illegal immigration. But Harris talked about the need of comprehensive immigration reform, ensuring a pathway to citizenship for immigrants who contribute to immigration reform, and addressing the humanitarian crisis at the border. But these conversations, the reason I brought it up is because I felt like these conversations are something that everyone kind of needs to be in tune with, because they're little flashes, you know what I mean, of each perspective of their takes, you know what I mean. And this is something that you have to be informed about, because ultimately this is going to change our future drastically, you know, on either side. So it's one of those things where you really have to put in perspective what's to come regardless of what happens, you know what I mean? So this falls in basically another subject that we're going to elaborate a little bit later. But it's one of those things where this is why, like, we feel like it's always like been our like bread and butter of this organization, right? To go out and go to the doors of community members and talk to them about like these upcoming future elections, you know what I mean? The importance to go out to vote. Because when I spoke to you earlier this year, like I guess the biggest I would say
Hurdle.
Yeah, but also like ansiedad, you know what I mean, was that there were talks a lot of people just didn't want to go out to vote
Yeah,
this
the
year.
biggest concern, yeah, was that.
Yeah, a lot. And even more with the youth, they seem to just not care at all, you know what I mean? So it was something that before like our campaign, La Gente Vota, kicked off, it was just a major concern. How can we not only inform our community about these elections, but get them to exercise their vote? You know what I mean? That is your right. That is your right to choose to make a selection and have a better future for yourself and for your community members and for your family. Now, how do we do that? You know what I mean? One thing is insinuating that conversation and letting them know. Another thing is, you know, inspiring everyone to go out and do what they're able to, right? But it turns out that I was talking to Paul earlier, and he had some like clarifying information on that, and I was like, it starstruck me because I didn't know prior, but it's also like, it's great, you know what I mean? It just goes to show how much impact the work is doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, some of the figures that came out in a recent article about Georgia is that 22% of Latinos will be voting in their first presidential election in Georgia. So does that mean 22%? That's people turning 18?
That's how I would interpret that. Or first timers, meaning they just recently either became a citizen, or first timers in that this is the first time that someone's approached them and they feel, you know, confident to go out and vote.
Which goes to the canvassing work.
Yeah, I think Carlos shared a figure. It was, I think, 7 or 8 times, he said, was the average amount of times that someone needs to be have that outreach in order to get them to go out and vote, right? Like, one time of somebody coming, you know, having that conversation, it's not enough. Or someone calling you, it's not enough. For 2 times, 3 times, it's 7 to 8 times, I think, the amount. And he said, yeah, you know, maybe we can't be, you know, there the 8 times, but when they canvassed the doors in 2020 and prior to that in 2018, he's like, well, we might not be the first time, or we're definitely probably the 4th or 5th time that we come and knocking, you know, and it's or found somebody in their family that you know that told them, and it's I think we're getting there, you know, and not just this election, for future elections too, to be that. And we're not the only organization, obviously that's out there, you know, knocking, but I think it definitely helps, you know, that these people, a lot of times when there were people that I met, and Joe can probably attest to this, it was the first time anybody, they're like, it's the first time anybody's come out here and, you know, spoke to me. It's like, because some people, here in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, they were tired. They're like, this is the 5th pamphlet I receive. I don't want any of this information anymore. But when we went out to the other counties, it was the first time that they're like, no, we don't even receive any information. And the reason for that, it's a money, it's a statistics thing, right? They don't want to spend money on where there's not as many, you know, densely populated area, right? So, and it's an unfortunately because a lot of our people don't live in Metro Atlanta, and you know, they live in the outskirts. They don't receive this information at all, and I think we're forming part of that change, definitely.
So this article also said that Latinos are expected to cast about 200,000 ballots in Georgia, making up 4% of the vote, and that's a 20% increase over 2016. That's a significant number.
No, yeah, definitely. I know at least our work started 2018 with a major campaign. I think even before that they were involved in local races to make sure that people went out and voted. Obviously, the biggest one being 2020. And also 2022, they went out and canvassed and make sure people were ready for the elections, local elections. And we had our state governor race back then, too. And again, 2024. And I think this work is definitely working. I remember seeing those graphs in places like Tifton and smaller ones where it's like, it was something ridiculous, like only 40 Latinos had voted in the county, and then you saw the start change of like doors that we had knocking. All of a sudden, it was like, like 120 people or 200 people. You're like, well, it's only like 100 votes, but that signifies a big change, right? Like that people, when given the information and when approached, tell them the importance that it is for their community to go out and vote. They go out and vote because why wouldn't you? You're exercising your right.
No, absolutely. And like going back to what you said, I remember when I went out for like a week, you know what I mean, with the canvassers, and I was in the car with them, documenting the work, being proactive, being on the ground with them. And I remember, like Jonathan said, right, it's like we would have instances where a community member would be like, that's insane. I've never had someone come out and knock on my door regarding this type of information or any information, period. I didn't even know there was an election going on. And it's like that always sparks up morale because it just re-emphasizes how important this work is, you know what I mean? Because sure, like you said, it may take up to 6, 7, 8 times, you know what I mean? But there's also those instances where there's people who never even knew about this, and just off that one interaction, you know what I mean, it changed their mindset, completely.
Exactly. Yeah, 8 is the average, but there'll be people that do on the first time, on the second time, and some people, no matter how many times you knock on their door, they're not going to vote. But that's okay. And those interactions are awesome, and it puts the spark or the seed. And they usually tell their kids, a lot of times when you approach their parents, they know the importance of voting, but it's like, if they can't vote, a lot of times that culture that they speak about a lot about, the culture of voting, doesn't really get passed along, because if the parent can't vote, then how do they teach their kids to exercise that vote? But now a lot of them are turning 18, like you said, so there's going to be 1 in 5 Latino voters that can vote will be going out, and that's a statistic. We're hoping that it's higher.
Right.
I know they were surprised in 2020 the amount of people that went out and voted. I don't think they were expecting definitely Georgia to flip. I don't think that was not in their radar. They knew, but they didn't expect it to happen. And I mean, it did. We're not a big percentage, but hey, 4% that might be able to swing an election.
In a swing state, that matters.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's like going back. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, and I'm just gonna end with the Migrante Chisme tour. Okay. But just to keep going, and that's another reason too. I feel like a lot of people who, when they finally get that push and that courage and motivation to go out and vote, and then they get to the polls and maybe a piece of information they didn't have on them, or they went to the wrong poll, you know what I mean? It's an immediate discouraged, because they're just like, well, at least I tried, I'm done. And it's like being able to not only canvass, but then going to the polls, that we do our job, which is, going to the polls and being able to help them when they come out, like, oh, they said I was in the wrong poll. Like being there on site and telling them, oh, okay, well, here, this is actually your poll. If you go here, it's probably 10 minutes down the street, et cetera, et cetera. Or they're telling me I'm missing this piece of information. I don't know what that is. And helping them right then and there to get them taken care of. Or if not, you know what I mean, to be able to sign the absentee ballot, because maybe you can't go, you know what I mean? It's just being able that, okay, they're inspired, they're motivated to go out and execute a vote, but now they need some additional assistance because they either, like I said, missed a piece of information, they're not really used to, or they're not aware of how to sign up to do it, and how to, or when's the registration deadline and all those things. So it's like giving them another hand, you know what I mean, just to really seal the deal that they're going to be okay, just goes a long way as well. And I feel like that's why, again, the job that we do is so crucial and beneficial for our communities, because it's like not only we're informing you, but we're giving you that hand, you know what I mean, to take that step to be like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to be able to do this, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to be starstruck and like, oh, I don't know if I can do this or not. But and just to end on that, it's also one of those things where, as of recently, the La Gente Vota campaign has hit just over 150,000 doors and over 60 counties. So we're spreading out. I remember I was talking to somebody who was reaching out to us like not too long ago, maybe a few days ago, who were asking, oh, like, do you guys, just base work on, South Atlanta? It's like, no, we're across the entire state, you know what I mean, hitting every corner. So it's definitely like really cool to see how, I always picture like a little map and I just see a bunch of little cars just driving all around Georgia, you know what I mean? Because that's us. But yeah, absolutely. And lastly, if we have time, I wanted to talk about the Migrante Chisme Tour.
Yeah, and just to emphasize a little bit about the canvassing work, because it is canvassing work, and it's not just leaving a flyer. Someone, again, just about everyone here in GLAHR at one point or another campaigns or has canvassed for someone or for a specific thing, and it's not. We're not just leaving flyers on the door. I think a lot of people picture it like that, or just knocking on the door, and it's like, oh, hoping no one answers, leave a flyer and walk off. No,
right.
It's all these trainings that people have on, asking the other person that's on the other side of that door, like what the key issues are that's important to them, understanding what the community wants, and to kind of gauge, it's like, okay, like, what is something important that can, get them to go out and vote, because their vote matters. But what matters too is like being able to motivate them to go out and vote. So it's not leaving a flyer. It's not just like, hey, here are the dates, make sure you get out and vote. No, it's not just that. It's a lot more complex than that. Sometimes, a conversation, might last only a minute. You only have a minute to, basically get out the days because, they're at work or they're with a kid and they're busy. But sometimes you have a 5-minute conversation with someone and they tell you, it's like, I wish they would do this. I wish, it's like, and I wish I knew where I could get and vote. And you help them with that and you have that conversation. And sometimes I feel like having those real conversations, understanding what matters to people, to me, that's what, like, in my mind, that's how I see them, getting involved. When someone is approaching them, like, yo, here, here's the dates, here's where you can go out and vote. I mean, they can Google that information. It's trying to get them to have the energy and the motivation to Google that information, right? Like, hey, it's like, what matters to you, and a lot of people, I would say everyone has something to say, whether it's from education about their children that they care about, whether it's, the expenses that they pay here in Georgia. One of them was like, I just moved here from Alabama. I still remember this conversation. He's like, why is insurance so expensive here? He's like, I don't get it. I was like, well, that has to do, with businesses here. But, like, if we had someone different in the state, maybe they could change that. It's like, it's not just about the presidential or the governor's race. You also vote for a lot of local people that have power. Families, I've had a woman that said, man, she lives like right on the edge, and she's like, my district changes, every couple years because they change the line and they move stuff around. And she's like, sometimes I got to send my kid to a different school, and she was, complaining about that. And I was like, yeah, your local officials have a lot of power on that. It's like, so make sure you get out and you vote because, well, she can see it, that it affects her, her year-to-year life, where you send your kids, all that stuff. I feel like sometimes we forget, and it's like, oh, it's just the president that we vote for. There's right. A lot of elections, and a lot of people hold power, and we as voters can, impact that.
Entirely. Let's backtrack a little bit. I wanted to say that this organization has been around longer than I've been alive, which is insane to me, right? 25 years and counting. And, it started as like a little small hub to fast forward to now, like, we finally have our first headquarters, which is a tremendous accomplishment, for this organization. And with that being said, El Chisme Tour is coming to Atlanta on Saturday. And they're going to be over here with us, and they're going to be collaborating with us, having fun. We're gonna have bands, DJs, etc. But most importantly, when I heard about that, they were going from state to state all across the country. But a lot of people were asking, what exactly is a Chisme Tour? What does that mean? For our English viewers, chisme is gossip. So what's the gossip, right? And what it is, it's a grassroots campaign that was from Migrante, and they go, state to state, and they stop at different cities to spark conversations with the community about crucial issues affecting them, from politics to social justice. So really being able to emphasize specifically in each state, right? Like, what's going on? What can we do? You know what I mean? How can we bring the power to the community? How can we educate each other? And not just that, but to have to open up the room so they can talk about their issues, so they can talk about stories that they've seen going on, you know what I mean? To kind of get the ball rolling on that. And I think that's the reason I wanted to start the conversation, right, with HB 1105, because them coming to Atlanta on Saturday is something very, very important, because not only are we going to be able to talk about a little bit more about the work that they're doing and the work that's being done, but we're also going to be able to open up the door, or the space rather, for everyone to talk about, things that's been going around in their area, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be just Atlanta. It could be, anywhere in Georgia, coming down and be able to talk about it and see what they can do and have their questions answered, you know what I mean? And ultimately stay in contact with us.
Yeah, the networking part, the meeting other people that are doing, similar work across the nation and other countries. We have a lot of people from Puerto Rico as well, and it's like the fight is not just a local fight. It's everyone is having their fights. Yeah, it's all connected,
It is.
And these things help connect people, right? It's we're more connected than ever before, but sometimes we need to be connected on that physical level, and being able to talk to somebody, and they give that space, right? They bring it. It's they do sort of like we're doing here. They open up a space, they have podcasts, they have those conversations with people, and they invite the community, right? It's not them talking about the community. It's an open space where the community can talk about the issues happening around them.
Right. And I I really want to emphasize that primarily here in Atlanta, with tons of things going on, tons of things in motions, not just HB 1105. We still have things like Cop City, you know what I mean, that's actively in the works as well, which we're actively fighting. And also, I know a lot of people had a lot of questions about what exactly is Project 2025. Like, these things, they all connect with each other, you know what I mean? And that open space allows us to not only tell our 2 cents about it and our story, but also to get some vital information back, you know what I mean? And how can we use this successfully to protect us, to maybe, ultimately make better decisions for us in the future. So
awesome. Well, I don't know if you guys have something else to mention before we say goodbye.
See you Saturday.
See you Saturday.
See you
There
Saturday.
we go. Well, before we go directly, remember we always have a chant, and that we say, and the chant is "Aquí estamos
Y no nos vamos."
So, if you want to start it, we'll finish
Absolutely.
it up.
You ready?
Aquí estamos.
Y no nos vamos. Hasta luego.
Las opiniones y comentarios que acaban de escuchar en este programa no necesariamente representan los puntos de vista de Radio Migrante, sino de quienes participan como locutores, invitados y radioescuchas. Radio Migrante es un foro abierto a la diversidad de opiniones que existen en nuestras comunidades.
Radio Migrante, transmitiendo desde